Thank you. Hello, my name is Laura John, and I am the Program Officer of the Eastern Caribbean Green Entrepreneurship Initiative in the GGGI Caribbean office based in St. Lucia. It is indeed my pleasure to be your MC for this evening's proceedings. His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, President and Chair of the Global Green Growth Institute, Your Excellencies, Ministers and Vice Ministers from Cambodia, Côte d'Ivoire, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Lao PDR, Qatar, Rwanda, Uganda, Vietnam, and Zambia. Distinguished guests from the diplomatic community and international organizations, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. We are very pleased to have you all join us today for the Ministerial Panel session, which is also the forum for the official launch of the Global Green Growth Week 2022. For this Ministerial Panel, the President and Chair of GGGI's Assembly and Council, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, together with ministers from the Global Green Growth Institute's membership, will share their strategic views and reflections on the progress made since Rio +20, since the establishment of GGGI as an intergovernmental organization, and share their inspirations on what GGGI's contribution has been and what more can be done. I am now pleased to invite the Global Green Growth Institute's Director General, Frank Riesberman, to officially launch the Global Green Growth Week 2022.
Thank you, Laura, who is indeed one of our staff visiting from the Caribbean. It's wonderful to see so many of our members represented here in person after several years of COVID, and to reflect a little bit on how much the world has changed in the last 10 years. Today I've had a number of bilaterals with most of the ministers and vice ministers here, and just with our President and Chair, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, reflecting on all the progress that has been made in the last 10 years, but of course also the many new challenges that have arisen. This week we've brought together in Global Green Growth Week, I think it is 37 sessions. We call this the opening because the August presence of all the ministers here, but in fact we started on Monday going almost round the clock with sessions here in Seoul, in Latin America and in Africa, people reflecting on their experience to date, the challenges they have, the ever-increasing challenges, not only of climate, but of COVID, the crisis that followed, the current energy crisis, the food crisis we are fearing will hit us in the coming winter, and to see still how we can remain optimistic and find what technologies, what finance, what opportunities there are for countries to accelerate the green transition. So I'm very pleased to formally launch here in your presence the Green Growth Week, and to see all of the people present tomorrow in our Council and Assembly meeting to make plans for the years to come. But first, let me hand over the microphone to our President and Chair, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon. Please.
Excellencies, Ministers and Vice Ministers, distinguished guests and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome all of you to this panel event. We will look back at how far GGGI has come since the UN Conference on Sustainable Development, commonly known as Rio +20 Summit in 2012. GGGI was born as a treaty-based intergovernmental organization at Rio +20 10 years ago, and we celebrated GGGI's 10-year anniversary in June of this year. As you may know, as the United Nations Secretary General at that time, I was there to Rio, at Rio Plus 20, along with then President of Republic of Korea, Lee Myung-bak, and then Prime Minister of Denmark, Helle Thorning-Schmidt, and former Prime Minister of Korea, Han Sung-soo. As many of you may also know, there were many times during my tenure at the United Nations when I felt embarrassed because my own government, country, was not fully supportive of some of my most passionate efforts, official development assistance, and also such as the Paris Climate Change Agreement. I have been always urging the Korean government, as now a private citizen, but as president of this GGGI, that the Korean government should do much more than, if I may say, again, I talked to new president, Yoon Suk-yeol, as soon as he was elected. Then I told him the importance of raising the level of Korean government's official development assistance. Now, thankfully, he instructed the Deputy Prime Minister of Finance and Economy that we should double this Korean ODA. And practically speaking, I understand that it may take a little bit longer time because I met the Deputy Prime Minister. Then he said that there is a lot of budget requests. Then at least they will try to increase significantly next year, then double it. This is what I was told. So let's hope for the best. Korea, our host government, is now moving. Ladies and gentlemen, I have watched as Korea started to adopt green growth and sustainable development over the last 10 years to become one of the global leaders in the fight against climate crisis. Therefore, I was proud to lead the GGGI since from 2018, following my retirement from the United Nations, and I am proud to lead it today because GGGI's mission overlaps very heavily with both the Paris Climate Change Agreement and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, probably two of my proudest legacies as a Secretary General of the United Nations. Please consider some of these statistics and figures. Having started with just the 18 signatory member states in 2012, there are now 44 member states with more than 20 other countries in the membership process. During the last 5 years, GGGI's projects helped reduce an estimated 170 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, created 1.2 million green jobs, helped avoid deforestation, 14 million hectares, and helped 1.6 million people gain access to sustainable waste management. And over the past 7 years, GGGI helped mobilize for its members more than $7 billion in green and climate investment, as well as adopt 228 policies, nationally determined contributions, and long-term low-emission development strategies. I would like to applaud and thank all GGGI experts and staff members who have worked tirelessly. I eagerly look forward to seeing how much more GGGI will accomplish, helping developing countries transition to the green growth model of environmentally sustainable and socially inclusive growth in the next 10 years. I hope our productive discussions today will help see where we could go in the next 10 years. Thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to the discussions. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Thank you, President and Chair. Well, in this panel, we wanted to give the floor to our members. Some members who were founding members, like Qatar, some members who joined relatively recently, like Côte d'Ivoire, some countries like Kazakhstan, where we've just heard that the President has signed a law enabling Kazakhstan to become a member, countries like Kyrgyzstan, where we also joined recently, and a country like Zambia, where we understand Cabinet has approved membership and we expect to receive that ratification soon. So we have a mixture of countries that have all joined this green growth path, either from the beginning or more recently. And we wanted to give you a chance in this panel, and then we have a second panel with another number of countries, to give you a chance to explain what the key achievements or possibly challenges were in the last 10 years and how you look ahead at the challenges coming. So that is a very easy question for me to ask, but much more difficult for you to answer. But please, could we try and maybe go, starting with you, explaining a bit. Le premier participant dans ce forum, Monsieur Kwasi Kwame, représente le Côte d'Ivoire et il va nous répondre en français. Et pour ceux qui sont sur l'Internet, ils ont de traduction aussi, si vous voulez le traduire en anglais ou en espagnol. Excusez-moi pour mon pauvre français, Monsieur Kwame, mais c'est bon. À vous.
Bonsoir, les chers délégués. Je parle au nom de la Côte d'Ivoire et par rapport à tout ce que le GGGI fait en Côte d'Ivoire. Le GGGI a été installé en 2021 avec un représentant pays et depuis février 2022, ils ont maintenant la représentation régionale à Abidjan et il y a une représentation nationale. Et au bout de ces 2 années, ils ont été beaucoup sollicités parce que la Côte d'Ivoire a des ambitions. Vous avez suivi que nous avons réalisé en Côte d'Ivoire, avec succès bien sûr, la COP 15. Et nous avons été aidés par le GGGI. Pour cela, toute la Côte d'Ivoire tient à dire grand merci à son Excellence Ben Ki-moon et à toute son équipe. Aujourd'hui, le problème qui se pose au niveau de l'Afrique, il y en a plusieurs, mais le problème majeur concernant surtout le climat, c'est la destruction de nos terres et des forêts. La Côte d'Ivoire a alors adopté, à l'issue de la COP 15, ce qu'on a appelé Abidjan Legacy Programme. Et la Côte d'Ivoire s'est investie. En tout cas, nous avons un certain nombre de programmes qui vont se décliner, bien sûr, en projets et qui demandent beaucoup de moyens. Beaucoup de moyens. Et pour cela, nous souhaiterons profiter de ce forum-là pour demander à tous les partenaires techniques et financiers d'aider nos pays, surtout les pays en voie de développement, qui croupissent sous le poids d'autres problèmes sociaux comme la santé, etc. Mais il y a beaucoup d'efforts que nos États font. Mais c'est insuffisant et c'est pour ça que nous sommes à ce forum pour exprimer faire entendre la voix de la Côte d'Ivoire et même de l'Afrique. Parce que les problèmes que nous vivons en Côte d'Ivoire sont les mêmes problèmes que vivent les autres pays en voie de développement. On ne va pas être long. Voici nos problèmes un peu résumés, mais nous avons l'ambition de passer, parce qu'on avait eu depuis 2015 avec l'accord de Paris, on a révisé nos objectifs pour la CDN, où on avait prévu 28% en réduction carbone, et nous sommes passés maintenant, jusqu'en 2025, on compte réaliser 40%. Mais tout ceci demande des moyens. Et c'est pour ça que nous demandons à ce que nos partenaires nous aident, nous accompagnent pour la réalisation de ces objectifs. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. If you were online, you may have had the translation, but let me give the very short English summary of what you said. Monsieur Kwame. That is that indeed GGGI has worked with Côte d'Ivoire since 21 as a country program, 22 now also a regional office. We have supported Côte d'Ivoire in organization of the 15th COP for the Desertification Conference, where the Abidjan Legacy Program was put in place. And indeed, Côte d'Ivoire has the willingness to address the climate change challenges, but is struggling with indeed ecosystem destruction and deforestation, and it needs support. It is interested in partnership, and indeed the key thing that is lacking, I think that is also already highlighting the key theme for COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh for African countries, is an increased focus on adaptation and an increased focus on bringing resources to the table from partners to help governments that are showing willingness to tackle the problems, but need cooperation, and particularly moyens, resources, finance. Thank you. Well, thank you for that first perspective. Then maybe turn to your neighbor, representing Kazakhstan, and indeed sharing good news for GGGI, but indeed also giving your perspective from Kazakhstan on the green growth challenges and accomplishments of the country.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, it is a great honor for me to be part of today's Global Green Growth Week at GGGI headquarters. As was mentioned on 21st October, our President signed a law that is basically about our joining the Global Green Growth Institute. So in a few days, I think we will be sending our certificates of accession, and it is a great honor and pleasure for us to be here today and become a member of this important institution. I think if we say that the Green Agenda today is one of the most important agendas, it will not be definitely an understatement. We see that, that the events that happened in the last 2 years with COVID-19, that the economic recession and climate crisis are once again proving that we really need to build back better, and that building back better should be greener. So the green growth and green economy, we believe, is the recipe for building back better, and such growth should also balance all three dimensions of sustainable development, that is social, economic, and environmental. Kazakhstan was not a member of GGGI, but nonetheless, of course, we were among the first countries who introduced green economy principles in its state planning system. As such, in 2013, we adopted a concept to transitioning to a green economy. And ever since, we managed to mainstream the principles of green growth in many areas, starting from renewable energy development and ending with energy efficiency, waste reduction, waste management. Of course, there are many more that needs to be done, that should be done, and we are hoping that with this membership, we will be working together to make it happen in terms of green growth. Another important global issue that our colleague from Cote d'Ivoire also mentioned, is definitely a climate change. Today, Kazakhstan and Central Asia in general countries of Central Asia experiencing the rise of temperature, which is happening 2 times faster than the global average. And of course, we're seeing the consequences of climate change already today. Last year in Kazakhstan, we saw a devastating droughts, which of course caused lots of damages. And of course, we pay very special attention to climate change adaptation. We understand that Kazakhstan is one of the most carbon-intensive economies of the world. And for that reason, we have committed to reducing our carbon emissions, absolute reductions by 15% of 1990 level by 2030, and by 25% if there is an additional international support. But also we have pledged in 2020 to reach carbon neutrality by 2060. So we're currently finalizing our strategy on carbon neutrality that is going to set us on a track towards carbon neutral development. One of the key instruments in Kazakhstan that we also developed in the last decade, that is one of the important instruments of decarbonization, is emissions trading system. We plan to further develop it to align with best international cases, for example, with the European Union's ETS system. We're planning to review the benchmarks, improve the offset system, as well as include additional sectors, installations, and gases. So far, the Kazakh ETS system covers approximately half of our carbon emissions. Last year, we adopted a new environmental code that further improves the approaches towards environmental regulation, including enhancing the polluter pays and fixes principle, as well as the extension of public participation in decision-making process. We have created a favorable condition for introduction of best available techniques by the biggest polluters, and the favorable environment for green technologies and green investments and green financing. So we have adopted a green taxonomy that should be aiding the above developments. One chapter we specifically dedicated to climate change adaptation. We indicate that we have 4 most vulnerable sectors that include water resources, forestry, agriculture, and disaster risk reduction. So we're hoping to introduce this iterative 7-step climate change adaptation process in these 4 sectors that should reduce our vulnerabilities and exposure to climate change related risks. Of course, we see the future as green, and we would like to work with our partners in making our aspiration come true. We believe that GGGI is an important platform, and we're looking forward to work with the member states and GGGI Institute in achieving a greener future. So thank you very much for accepting us as members in a few days. And we're looking forward to mutually beneficial, but also enriching partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you. And indeed, we haven't quite seen the instrument of accession, but we're still very happy to welcome you in advance, so to speak. And it's good to hear, sometimes the work of GGGI starts with developing a green growth strategy. And indeed, you'll hear later from Zambia, that is the point where we're starting. In other countries, like in Kazakhstan, you have already worked with the UN and with others to develop your own green economy or green growth strategy. And we can now work on mobilizing finance to implement, which is, I think, the key goal that most countries have as we work with them. And indeed, we look forward to working like that with you in Kazakhstan as we're expanding our membership in Central Asia. We worked first in Mongolia, and indeed, as we turn to the next speaker from Kyrgyzstan, there were some opportunities to possibly learn from the experience in Mongolia for Kyrgyzstan to set up a green financial corporation, a green bank. And like that, I think there are opportunities to share lessons among different countries, among the membership of GGGI. And indeed, we have not yet set up a program in Kyrgyzstan, but Kyrgyzstan joined just at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, early 2020, and we're busy preparing for a country program there. But please, Deputy Minister Abramanov, can you share a bit the perspective of Kyrgyzstan on the green challenges and your journey to date and going forward? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, distinguished participants, Your Excellency, Mr. Pan Ki-moon, Mr. Isberman. Actually, I was not expecting to be the speaker at the panel discussion, but taking this opportunity, I would like to also to express our appreciation and gratitude to the GGGI for arranging this event, for inviting us to attend today's meeting. We believe that, as my colleagues already said, this is a very important platform and opportunity to exchange our views, to understand what are the global initiatives, trends, and how the member countries are transforming its economies to more climate-oriented development. And in this regard, Kyrgyz Republic is also has embarked on quite ambitious program towards green economy, green development, introducing these principles into the sectoral strategies, into the country strategy. And of course, we are looking forward to learn about international practices, best practices that are implemented in other developing and more developed countries. And of course, the cooperation with GGGI will be, we convinced that it will be also fruitful and helpful to find out new initiatives, programs, opportunities, and tools to switch to more sustainable and green development. The Kyrgyz Republic has already prepared and adopted different programs, one of which is Green Economy Program. This is a midterm program which focused on priority sectors such as energy, transportation, urban development, agriculture, of course. And since the Kyrgyz Republic is also quite vulnerable to the climate change, we are now preparing additional national adaptation program, which will also focus at the horizontal and vertical level in terms of introducing new measures, including into the water resource management, in agricultural development, in healthcare, as well as in disaster risk management. For the Kyrgyz Republic, it is quite important, since it is also not the issue of only environmental sustainability, but it also creates significant challenges in socio-economic development. So in this regard, we need to understand that this is not something very abstract and long-term oriented challenges, but it's happening right now. And we need to react, to adapt, and to act today. So for that reason, the Kyrgyz Republic is looking for all available opportunities in cooperation with other countries at the regional, at the global scale level, and with development partners in tackling this global climate change issues. And we have, of course, we have, as many other member states, we have ratified the Paris Agreement on climate change. Last year, we have presented our nationally determined contributions at the COP26, and now we need to prepare concrete, specific programs and projects at different sectoral levels to achieve these ambitious goals. And of course, it will be difficult to achieve it without international support, without expertise that our development partners, in particular GGI, is already earned, and we understand clearly that it will be not possible, of course, to meet these global targets without financial resources. So we need to mobilize all existing financial resources, not only from the international financial institutions, although they are playing a key role in this transformation, but also we need to look forward at the state budget level, at the engagement of the private sector and their role in this transformation. And I think in particular in Kyrgyz Republic, our main difficulty, challenge, and problem is absence of experience in development of climate-oriented projects. First of all, there is lack of relevant and reliable climate data, so we need to work on this as well. But again, as I've mentioned, the identification of problems leads to identification of project ideas, but we also need specific expertise in preparing feasible, bankable projects that might be considered by different institutions. And I think here GGGI can bridge this gap. Thank you.
Thank you. And indeed, you have very nicely summarized what is almost the reason for existence for GGGI. I mean, the lack of experience in formulating and developing bankable projects that can implement climate action is, I think, one that is shared by almost all of our members. So indeed, we look forward to working with you and exploring the opportunities to work together in Central Asia as well. In addition to Mongolia, we have a program now in Uzbekistan, and I know that we have developed a program, for instance, between Kyrgyz Republic and Uzbekistan to look together at increasing adaptation to climate change, particularly in the water resources area. And we hope to implement that together with you in the years to come. So thank you for being here. And then maybe we can turn to one of our founding members, and Mr. Al-Sada, the Secretary from Qatar, who is in charge of climate change. He reminded us earlier in the bilateral that he was there with Mr. Ban when GGI was established in Rio 10 years ago. So you are one of our founding fathers. But more recently, we also started a program to work with the government of Qatar to strengthen your climate action, as well as appreciating the support that through the Qatar Fund for Development goes from Qatar to our other members to implement their climate action. So please, Sir Al-Sada, can you please share your views on the same issues?
Thank you, Frank. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to express my appreciation to the Green Growth Institute for the organization of this event. And as we are thrilled to continue working with you all and discussing our future goals, I hope that we will be having a fruitful meeting. Go back for your question regarding Qatar strategy or vision for the climate change. Well, with us launching last year, Qatar National Strategy for Environment and Climate Change, and also we launched Qatar National Climate Change Action Plan. We are now moving forward from the planning phase to the implementation in a dynamic and interactive way with our partners and stakeholders to fulfill our aspirations in the area of environment, sustainability, and climate change.
We wouldn't be complete if we didn't give you a chance to say a word or two about the World Cup that is about to kick off and how you're working on making that the world's first Green Cup.
Okay, regarding World Cup, I would like to welcome all of you for joining us and enjoy for the World Cup in Qatar. Will be next November, 20 November. The first match will be Qatar with the Ecuador, inshallah. Okay. I give you an example for one example or more than one for regarding the World Cup. And just to give you an example, I cannot list all of the achievements that we will fulfill so far. We are now having major steps in the area of sustainable transportation, for example, as we are shifting to more general means that includes, but not limited to, a network of sustainable public transportation, especially system that not only covers Qatar, but also connected the World Cup stadiums in a way that will make all of our guests to attend this event a key partner in our sustainable journey.
Excellent. And indeed, I've visited Qatar and can see that there was a huge effort to make Qatar ready as a host, and you are a good host, but indeed also to make sure that that is done in the greenest possible way. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alsada. Can we then turn finally to Permanent Secretary from Zambia to share the similar perspective from your country with us?
Thank you very much, Director General. Your Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, other excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Zambia last year made a very, very important decision to sharpen its focus on its efforts to pursue a green growth development pathway. And in so doing, created the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. However, this decision rides on significant progress that has been made over the years. And going back a few years, there are a few strides that we've made in this regard to arrive where we are. For instance, we have established and revised laws, policies, and strategies, such as the National Policy on Climate Change in 2016. We also did the National Climate Change Learning Strategy in 2021, which is just last year. Also the National Climate Change Communication Strategy in 2022. We revised the National Energy Policy in 2020 and started the drafting of the first ever climate change bill in 2020 as well. In addition to that, as you heard earlier from Director General, we've also been developing since the beginning of this year a green growth strategy, which will guide us in transforming our economy into a green economy and to sustain it thereafter. Of course, like many other countries, we are also doing the National Adaptation Plan. And recently, because of the decision that was made last year, we have also been revising some of these policies. And some of these are the climate change policy itself, which we developed in 2016 in order to align it to a current vision. The Forestry Policy and the Forests Act. Also the Policy on Environment and the Environmental Management Act, as well as the Meteorology Policy. And we are also developing the Meteorology bill for the first time ever. We have established an institutional framework which we believe can make us attain our aspirations. For instance, all green climate change related activities are coordinated through a framework at the very top, raised it to the level of the Vice President of the nation, who leads a Council of Ministers to provide policy guidance. Under it, we have a steering committee, many of permanent secretaries, and of course, the technical level below that. We have continued with our international obligations. We ratified the Paris Agreement in 2016. We have submitted our third national communication and the first biannual report in 2019. And we did revise our NDCs like most other countries in 2020. We have also embarked over the years on developing programs and projects that will actualize our aspirations. And we have made some progress with the GCF. Of course, we want to do more, as I will elaborate very soon. We have had 2 direct access entities facilitated and accredited, and accessed 5 readiness project grants from the GCF. Over the last 20 years, of course, in terms of challenges, our key challenge is reconciling people's livelihoods with environmental considerations. We have a serious issue with deforestation, and yet we have a significant number of people that depend on charcoal burning as a major source of energy. So that is quite a challenge and requires quite significant resources to be able to reverse. Of course, just to reemphasize, limited financial resources is another challenge to address the various other challenges that we face. Our priorities going forward, of course, is to build resilience among the communities, especially those that reside in the rural areas. Zambia is a vast country, and some of the places can be quite difficult to service. But over and above that is to facilitate low carbon development in the key sectors that we have outlined in our NDC, and these are agriculture, forestry, energy, transport, coal, and liquid waste. Specifically, some of the objectives we would like to attain is to increase the level and diversified access to green and climate finance. We also want more and improved capacity in our institutions. We establishment of a national financing vehicle, which is provided for in the bill that I talked about earlier, the climate change bill. We think that this can help us attain our objectives. And I also have talked before about the green growth strategy, which we look at as a key tool for resource mobilization. And we also we are working very hard to incentivize the private sector to invest in green projects and attract green investment to the country. And we are happy to be part of this wonderful family under the GGGI. We look forward to sharing experiences with all of you and learning more, and through GGGI access the much needed resources that we need to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think in advance, we shared questions with you through my colleague, Mr. Mohamedou Tunkara. And indeed, we thought we'd first talk about the last 10 years and then about your priorities. But many of you have already given us comprehensive answers talking about both the last 10 years and your plans about going forward. So that was very helpful. We do have a little bit of time. If you have, if I can ask you a short question, just to say, now you've given us all your official policies and your experience, but as ministers and policymakers, if there is one thing you could wish for in the next 5 years that your country could achieve to help with this green transition? And maybe one thing that the GGI could support you in, what would it be? So I'll translate that in French if you need to. If there is one thing, est-ce qu'il y a une seule chose qui est le plus important dans les prochaines 5 années que vous pouvez achever comme un but spécial dans votre domaine pour ce travail de green growth, de développement durable? C'était quoi? Pouvez-vous nous dire?
Oui, je sais pas. OK. Alors, nous avons plusieurs projets. Nous avons plusieurs projets. Le ministère a retenu 24 projets spécifiques. Mais nous vivons des situations difficiles, surtout avec les sachets. Les sachets non dégradables. Là.
Oui, plastique.
Les plastiques non dégradables. Et ça, c'est un problème. Partout, on utilise des sachets. Et on a même monté des projets pour chercher des bailleurs pour nous permettre de faire cette transformation, de transformer ces déchets recyclés pour qu'on ne vive plus la situation qu'on vit à Abidjan et dans la Côte d'Ivoire. Ça, c'est un objectif prioritaire, ça. Parce que pour ceux qui sont déjà partis à Abidjan, ils ont constaté que il y a la lagune, il y a beaucoup d'eau, mais il n'y a pas de poissons. Et ça, c'est le problème des sachets, des plastiques non dégradables. Ça, vraiment, c'est une pollution qui est là. L'État de Côte d'Ivoire fait des efforts, mais c'est difficile. C'est prioritaire. Deuxième. Ah, c'est le seul? Bon. Sinon, il y a aussi, vous voyez, la dégradation des sols. Hein.
Oui.
On en a parlé à la COP 15.
Oui. Je sais que tout le monde a plusieurs projets. Vous avez déjà dit 24.
Oui.
Mais le premier, dans le place premier, c'était le plastique.
Le plastique.
So, for those of you who don't speak French, I asked for a single priority, and indeed, while there are many, and all of you deal with many priorities all the time, the first thing that came to mind for you was the sachet, the small plastic bags that people use to drink water and then throw away. And they are everywhere, down to in the water, so there are no more fish, everywhere in the field. Now, actually, what people first have to do is collect them, of course, and then they tend to go to landfill, and then they create a problem in the landfill. Now, we have some interesting projects to deal with plastics, where actually plastic become refuse-derived fuel to replace coal in cement plants. That is actually a project that was successful in Cambodia. You could speak to that colleague there, sitting right there behind Mr. Ban. I think there are indeed interesting experiences. Plastic is a very difficult problem. And from banning plastic bags like they have done in Rwanda, to indeed finding ways to reutilize plastic or in the end turn it into fuel. It's a key area as we move to a circular economy. So thank you for raising that. Can I ask the same question for you? All of you on the panel have had a little bit more time, but try and come up with one thing that would be on your wish list.
Thank you. It's very difficult to think about one thing, but the first thing that I thought was also circular economy, because my feeling is that it's such it's such a big untapped it has such a big untapped potential. I mean, because circular economy is not only about waste, it is about resources, it is about creation of jobs, it is about creation of economic activities, and so on. And there are so many things that we can do that we are not doing, I think, enough. And I definitely support my colleague from Côte d'Ivoire. Maybe my colleagues, other colleagues will be joining us, but I was thinking also about circular economy. But another thing, to just expand a little bit, I think that we need to really introduce an ecosystem approaches, because when we think about, for example, preservation of water resources, it's not only about it's not about the resource itself, it is about the ecosystem, which is a little bit, not a little bit, but much a broader concept. So when we're losing the ecosystem, we're basically losing the long-term, our ability to use these resources in a long term, for example, water resources. If the glaciers are melting, means that in 20 years, we will not be having water. And I'm sure that my colleague from Kyrgyzstan will join me in this, because we do see that. So I think it's two things: circular economy and ecosystem approach. Thank you.
Even for top decision makers, it's difficult to prioritize and find one, right? It will quickly becomes 2, and if we let them, it would become 24 or 50. But thank you. Circular economy and ecosystem restoration. What would be your top priority in Kyrgyzstan?
Yeah, well, indeed, it is difficult to identify one priority, but I absolutely agree with previous speakers that, well, we have similar challenges, and waste management and responsible production, consumption is inside of this, and circular economy is a potential solution. But at the same time, I think we can develop a very good, strong project pipeline. We can introduce different strategies and programs at the government level. But most important thing, I think, is to transform the mindset of the society. And I think we are moving in this direction, and I have a positive feeling in this regard. I think this is the key for solving this. And the capacity, of course, the capacity to, we need the human resources with specific knowledge and expertise to address this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we didn't practice this. We hadn't asked you to talk about waste management or circular economy, but it is true that for almost all of our members, whether they are least developed or high income, waste management, circular economy is a high priority and an unsolved, untapped problem and opportunity as well. So thank you for sharing that. Salsala, what would you say to the same question?
I think I have one wish only. And just would like to mention that all of my colleagues that have some wishes and goals. My wish is that I wish that all of us achieving our environmental goals. That's all. And I have one more thing. I would like to take this opportunity to invite you and our colleagues here to visit our pavilion in COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. Thank you.
Was that a free ticket or what was that?
If there is a ticket, it will be free. But I don't think that. Okay.
Excellent. And there is a very good airline going to Doha. We know, yeah. Thank you. And indeed, I think you managed to have one priority that accomplishes all other priorities by wishing all of us to achieve our environmental goals. That was a very smart answer as well. You've had the longest time to think about this. What would you think for Zambia?
Thank you. We think that we have a fair understanding of our issues, and we are not short of ideas in terms of solutions. But with respect to GGGI, I think our priority would be to address the capacities of our institutions, whether this is capacity in technical issues or in actually mobilizing the necessary resources to take us to where we want to be.
Thank you. I think that will be shared by many of our members as well. Building institutions that can deal with green growth in general or specific sectoral challenges or climate finance, I think is a widespread priority. So thank you for reminding us of that. With that, I think we've had a good conversation among this first panel. I know that I surprised you with the question, but you're all courageously answering difficult questions about priority setting, which I think is the role of senior decision makers like yourself. So I'd like to end the first panel here and ask our MC. I think we might be using a few minutes to show a video now. Can you remind us what the program is now? Laura or Mahamadou, who would like to help us shift? Mahamadou would like to talk, but doesn't have a microphone. That's always a challenge. You can have this one or that one.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. As Frank indicated, we are going to have a 3-minute video. And during the 3-minute video, we will switch the panel.
Thank
so
you.
The panelists for the part 2 will move and take their seats in the next 3 minutes. Yeah, thank you. And thank you to all the panelists.
So much.
Founded to respond to climate change, the Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI, is an agile intergovernmental organization. It supports over 40 member and partner countries in the transformation of their economies to a model of green growth. GGGI's unique value proposition lies in its ability to support members and partners through its embedded country operation with policy advice and development of bankable projects that lead to the implementation of green growth policies and the mobilization of green and climate finance. To date, GGGI helped mobilize $7.2 billion in green investments, including green bonds and climate financial vehicles. It has supported the adoption of over 213 green growth national policies. GGGI has supported 30 member countries in Africa, Asia, Pacific, and the Caribbean islands on enhancing their nationally determined contributions, implementation roadmaps to meet their net zero targets. Through its projects, GGGI also helped create an enabling environment for required flows of finance, technology, MRV, and transparency, capacity building, and to improve Article 6 readiness and transactions. 15 member and partner countries across GGGI's region also receive support for their COVID-19 recovery plans. GGGI implements projects that respond to needs, promote climate-smart agricultural practices, protect biodiversity, build sustainable and circular bioeconomy, while securing healthy natural systems. GGGI projects make cities and communities sustainable, livable, and resilient, supported through green jobs, services, and green infrastructure capital markets innovations. These and other combined efforts have led to 171 million tons of CO2 emission reduction and the creation of 1.2 million green jobs. In addition, 700,000 people gained access to clean, affordable energy, and 1.6 million people have access to sustainable waste management. With its inclusive and diverse team, GGGI works with various partners at the global, regional, national, and local levels, and combined efforts have led to more effective results to combat the climate crisis, accelerate poverty eradication, and gender equality to achieve sustainable, inclusive development.
The challenges facing humankind have never been more urgent, but the opportunities to address these challenges are right in front of us.
Well, thank you. Yeah, when the Minister of Rwanda is ready, he can join. We'll begin. So we have a second panel, more of our high-level guests representing from Uganda to Cambodia to Vietnam and Laos, and then Rwanda when the minister will join us again. We had also asked the countries if any of them wanted to make a special statement on the 10th anniversary or on this occasion. And I think you'd like to make a statement on behalf of Cambodia. So maybe we'll begin with that. And after that, we'll have a similar question as we had before for the first panel to give each of you a chance to reflect on your journey towards green growth. But first, could we invite you to make the statement you had prepared? Yeah, you can, wherever, if you like. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Frank. Excellencies, head of delegations from GGGI members, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm very pleased to join the Ministerial Panel session with you all under the theme 10 years since Rio 20s. As a nation that recognizes the importance of achieving sustainable development goals, Cambodia has set a vision for the year of 2050 that not only Cambodia's economy growth would reach an upper middle and high income status, but the country's development will encompass social inclusiveness and environmental sustainability. Understanding the association of economic development and environmental challenges around the globe, the Royal Government of Cambodia strongly commits to promote green growth with sufficiently accelerate the economic development progress towards sustainable development and poverty reduction. In fact, financial mechanisms are being developed to reduce the risk of investment in green technologies and green businesses, such as the payments of ecosystem services. Cambodia also encourages its cities to promote private sector investment in green city development. More importantly, Cambodia's new investment law 2021 includes the promotion of green technology and green investment. Sustainable energy practices in government sector will also be focused in our green growth policies, in which we expect it would reduce energy cost and emissions. Being a least development country, we truly understand that we still face more challenges to respond to sustainable development goal in terms of green technology investment, financial support, and human resources. The Ministry of Environment of Cambodia has taken great efforts with many initiatives in terms of institutional capacity building, policy advocacy and formulations, as well as implementation of laws and policies in environmental protections, natural resource conservations, and sustainable development. But Cambodia has the comprehensive policy framework. Our three most recent development includes Cambodia long-term strategy for carbon neutrality, which is to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 through continued efforts to address the forest sustainability and land use, decarbonize our power sectors, and pursue higher energy efficiency, as well as promote low carbon agriculture industrial process, and waste management. Circular economy strategy and action plan adopted by 2021. Cambodia's roadmap for sustainable consumption and production 2022 and 2035. And in essence, these policy instruments are directing our development path toward achieving sustainable development goals. The environmental code draft is in the final stage. And once the code is promulgated, it will provide a comprehensive legal framework in support of the policy implementations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, like many other countries, Cambodia is taking our green transformation seriously. I must highlight that green investment with private sector participation is considered as the priority tool for our strategy development plans. With our policies and laws have fostered friendly environment for the green investments. Cambodia is working to enable greater financing opportunities for such investments. We strongly hope that the private sectors will play a major role in accelerating Cambodia's sustainable development. We are thankful for the contribution that the GGGI has made to Cambodia so far. We are delighted to work with our development partners and the private sectors. I hope we will continue to expand and strengthen our cooperation to promote green growth and green economy transformations. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Heng Sopalet, who explained the journey of Cambodia. Very similar statement to the questions we have for the others to ask each of you to tell us a bit more about your journey. And I think so then we will skip that general question for you because I think you've answered it, but I'll come back to you later with a more specific question about waste management in Cambodia that I know that we have worked on together. But first, maybe we'll give the other panel members a chance to share with us, and maybe we can go the other way around this time. We can start with you, Minister Kasaya, Minister of Finance for Uganda. If you're ready to share with us a bit the journey of Uganda towards a more climate resilient green economy. And of course, we're pleased to see more and more ministers of finance taking an active interest in this subject. I've been doing this for a very long time. It used to be only ministers of environment who would be interested in the subject, but gradually we now have ministers of planning, investment, and finance in the subject, which is, I think, exactly what it needs to make progress here. So can you please share your views, sir?
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies and friends. Good morning, or is it good afternoon? For Uganda, we are still waking up now. I will present my issues in a question form. The question number one is, for Uganda, what are the main green growth achievements without leaving out challenges over the last 10 years? On the achievements, Uganda developed its green growth development strategy in 2017. It also enacted the Climate Change Act in 2021. The low emissions development long-term strategy is under development now by the sector of water and environment. Uganda submitted its nationally determined contribution and has recently revised its emission targets from 22 to 24.7. Uganda has continued to participate in global climate finance engagements, and she has also had a delegation of negotiators at each of the past 10 United Nations Convention on Climate Change conference of parties. Uganda is engaging the private sector on the green growth and climate finance. We are also participating as one of the pioneer countries in the task force on access to climate finance spearheaded by the United Kingdom government. And we have established a climate finance unit under my ministry that seeks to enhance access to climate finance. Now, these I would say achievements, but there are also challenges. Challenge number one is lack of climate financing for undertaking actions identified under the nationally determined contribution and the Uganda Green Growth Development Strategy. Two, global economic crises caused by COVID-19 and the Ukraine war has impacted national revenue and external assistance, which I'm sure you all share with us. That's question number one. Question number two, what are the priorities for the current decade? In this decade, the government of Uganda is looking forward to making strides in one, climate change actions, that is mitigation, adaptation, and cross-cutting and disaster risk reduction. Two, biodiversity conservation and natural resource management. Three, sustainable land management. Four, sustainable energy. Five, sustainable transport options. Six, cities and urban development. Seven, climate smart agriculture. Eight, establishment of financing instruments and mechanism for green growth and climate finance. Nine, exploring the possibility of accessing innovative climate finance like the green bonds, climate for debt swap, and carbon markets. Now, finally, I want to answer the question, what is my priority now? Before you ask me, let me answer it straight away. The biggest problem now I see in Uganda is deforestation. Some 20, 30 years ago, Uganda had a forest cover 40% of the land mass. As I speak today, the Department of Forestry has not yet given me the actual figure, but I travel around the country very widely. It will be very surprising if that forest cover is now 10%. And this is a big cause for worry, because recently, and you know, I'm not a very young man, I'm approaching 90. Not 90, sorry. Yes, 90 years. 80, sorry, 80. We experienced a drought lasting for almost 120 days, which I had never seen in my lifetime. 120 days. And mudslides, particularly in the hilly areas or mountainous areas, which led to loss of lives and the destruction of property. So if I have to say what my priority is to restore the forest cover that I've talked about, which was existing about 30 to 40% of the land mass, about 20, 30 years ago. Because with the forest cover, many things will happen. One, the climate will be cool. Two, there will be evaporation, solar evaporation going up in the air. Three, the forest will attract back the rain. And four, when winds come, they will not destroy buildings, they will not destroy gardens as it is happening today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that might have been the first strong environmental forest-focused priority I've heard from a Minister of Finance. That's very interesting. Thank you, sir. And I think it is a trend where ministers of finance are indeed so much more involved in this subject. And indeed, I know, sir, that you are setting up with our support a climate finance unit in the Ministry of Finance. So I think that's a trend. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Now, Your Excellency, Sopalet, you already answered the general question. So maybe I can give you a more specific one. The last time I was in Cambodia, there was a waste management crisis. Your landfill was full. Are you going to build another landfill? It's a tricky question.
Actually, it's not tricky at all. Before I answer that, let me starting by giving a brief history of Cambodia. Cambodia, we only have peace, stability within the last 24 years. And when Frank was there, well, it was 20 years only that we have peace and stability. If we are comparing that to our human being, we just newly graduated from high school or get a bachelor degree, so we don't know where we go yet. But in Cambodia, as a co-founder of GGGI, co-founder member, since 2012, we've been laying green carpet throughout different ministries in our country, and waste management being one of the hottest topic, one of the worst issues as a country start to enjoy peace, stability, and development. Yes, waste are piling up, and our dump sites been filled and nowhere to go. And when there's rains come, it spills all over the places. But over the past 2 years, of course, COVID-19 is a pandemic, cost crisis, but we took the opportunities of COVID-19 period to develop different dump sites. Now with the strategies, policy that we've been put in place with the assistance with GGGI, working together with our government, especially the Ministry of Environment of Cambodia, we are able to allocate different sites, dump sites throughout the countries. Before, we only have one dump site in the capital city of Phnom Penh, and it's all filled. But now all provinces, we have dump sites. Over the past 2 years, we have developed dump sites and we have built dump sites. And we are moving toward every district will have dump site as well. So we are taking very seriously about this waste management, and thanks to GGI again. And beyond waste management, well, of course, we have this reusable, recycle, and separation of plastic waste. I think our last panelist was mentioning about plastic waste. Let me touch that a little bit here. We are moving into 2-3 directions along with the 3R that we are implementing. We are using the plastic as a source of energy to produce cement. Plastic, if we burnt it at 1000 degrees Celsius, it will dissolve. If we burnt it anywhere below 1000 degrees Celsius, it will become a particle, plastic particle that's flying all over the world. In another word, we give a passport to the plastic to fly into our atmosphere, whereby we will be breathing and causing damages to our health. But when we burned it beyond the 1000 degrees Celsius, it will just disappear. That one target, that one strategy that we're using to destroy plastic. Second strategy is that I was talking to Frank yesterday at the ASEAN Ministerial Summit or meetings last couple of years. I was proposing what we call the biodegradable plastic only among ASEAN countries. We are indeed fighting against plastic waste. We do the extensions, teaching, everything, but we never give out a solution. No alternative solution. So what we are doing here is trying to promote, to build factories to produce biodegradable plastics from cassava that is abandoned in our countries, in ASEAN countries, that can be replaced as an alternative to synthetic plastic that we are using every day. So these are the beyond the just waste management, we are moving toward plastic management, plastic waste management as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that, which I think was some good successes in Cambodia's journey in managing waste as a specific part of your green journey. Now, I know that we could talk for a long time about plastic in Vietnam as well, because it is a key issue. But first, maybe you could answer the more general question, Minister, about Vietnam's journey over the last 10 years as another founding member of GGGI. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We're waiting from Vietnam. So Vietnam has implemented green road policies in 2012. And over the past 10 years, we have achieved many remarkable results in green road. The most successful result including the building the institutional framework for green road, as well as we already updating the green road goals according to the international commitment. In specific, the first national green road strategy in 2012, with the support of the GGGI and other development partners that we are highly appreciated. And at the COP26 convention, Vietnam committed to net zero carbon emission by 2050. And therefore, Vietnam Green Road Action Plan 2012, following the COP26 commitment, has specific many policy action until 2030. And as directed by the Ministry of Planning and Investment of Vietnam, the relevant authority have outlined and executed their Green Road Action Plan. And the government also issued the National Target Program for Energy Conservation, National Target Program for Green Road and Climate Change, received financial and technical support from the development partner to deploy the support program to respond to climate change. And green consumption and green urban planning also receives more attention through various policy. And we'll say that finally, and very more important, that the public understanding of the green roads has changed fundamentally. So for the next decade, the challenge for Vietnam in green road, as you may know that we are a developing country and undergoing the economic transition. Also, we have achieved a high level of growth, but our economy is still very small, and investment resources for green growth is limited. According to the World Bank estimated that we need around nearly 400 billion US dollar. And state budget only meet around 30%. And the remainder must be raised from the development partner and private sector. And as such, we need the international community support, including GGGI support in mobilizing this fund. It is our result and the challenge of the green growth in Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that overview. Indeed, quite a few successes, but still challenges remain, as for all of us, I think. So if we can turn to another continent, but to another pioneer of green growth, Rwanda has been a member from GGGI from the start as well. And indeed, talking about plastic, I think Rwanda was the first country in Africa that banned plastic bags, for instance. You've been a leader in quite a few areas of green growth. So as Minister of Infrastructure, would you like to give us a bit of an overview of your country's perspective as well?
Thank you, DG, for this opportunity to share and this ministerial panel, and it is a pleasure, of course, to sit with fellow ministers and the other readers from different countries of the world, exchange knowledge and the rest on this journey of green growth. So briefly, Rwanda Ministry of Infrastructure is a ministry which is covering which it's a ministry has a big portfolio. So it is covering different areas, including road construction, water supply and sanitation, urbanization and housing, energy, public transport, and airport infrastructure. So all these areas are under the Ministry of Infrastructure. As I said, DG, and then of course my colleague has mentioned, so the climate change affecting significantly each sector among this sector have mentions, but we need to build resilient infrastructure. Of course, Rwanda has embarked on implementation of its long climate strategy, the green growth and climate resilience strategy to deliver on development of our vision 2050. One of the greatest achievements of implementing this strategy is the inclusive nature of engaging the entire citizen to own and deliver on the shared vision. So it is in this channel actually succeed to ban all plastic materials in the country. The subsequent effort are seen in Rwanda strong institution as well. So we have different institutions. Some are under the Ministry of Infrastructure, and others are under the Ministry of Environment, and the other institutions, of course, are independently and then are reporting directly to the Office of Prime Minister. So it means we have to join effort, especially in this journey of green growth. Subsequent effort has seen in Rwanda a strong institution that work tirelessly to mainstream green growth in all sectors, as I said. So there are clear results from one conservation effort, green infrastructure development, technology, and innovative approach to solving society's challenges. So of course, moreover, the engagement of the youth population, because in this of course, banning plastic materials across the country. So the country is using the youth. So they are mobilized across the country. So to avoid us to implement this strategy. So youth population to ensure they are driving the change that is needed for the country is eroded. Of course, we are working closely with different institutions, including the Ministry of Finance, and planning to have the green planning, especially development of infrastructure. As you said, of course, there are some challenges, but we share challenges as we are here. But the important thing is to join the effort. And then I take also opportunity actually to thank GGGI, especially its support, not financial, but also technical support on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you over the years and seeing the progress you make. Thank you for that. Well, finally, on this panel, may I turn to you, Madame, also planning and investment, and indeed share similarly about Laos' journey the last 10 years and priorities you have. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, DG Frank Wisperman, Excellencies, distinguished guests. colleagues. Thank you very much for inviting me to join this panel discussion. On behalf of the government of Laos PDR, it is my great pleasure to be here and joining government officials from around the world to discuss green growth agenda today. Over the past 10 years, Laos PDR has made a consistent progress regarding the implementation of this green growth agenda. And we also would like to thank you, Mr. Chair and also GGGI, who is always supporting us. Laos PDR became a member of GGGI in 2017. And after that, we have received technical support. And one of the very important is we have been able to formulate the national green growth strategy, which has been incorporated into our 5 years, the 5 years National Social Economic Development Plan. And we have implemented over this existing 5 years plan. This year is the second year of the implementation, and the targets, green growth target and indicators, have been implemented and monitored by, of course, MPI together with line ministries. And we are proud that we became a member, of GGI, and thank you very much. And of course, there are many activities, events that we have been implemented. For example, in 2020, in the year of 2020, we also have started to enhance our national development. The determined contribution and expanding the scope of our NDC, as mentioned by other excellencies, and the rising the level, of ambition in the NDC across both, conditional and unconditional. And a part of this, we also became the first countries in ASEAN and one of the LDC countries to adopt and commit to a net zero target. And I'm very proud of my government, together with other government, to commit on this important agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, I think we had a first round of good overview from our members that are here at the panel. I didn't want to ask the same question about what is your top priority, because we already discussed that, and indeed Minister Kasaya already gave his answer there. So maybe as we slightly shift that, and we are all almost going to COP27, and I'm sure that at home you have prepared your agendas for COP27. You know what you would like to see come out of Sharm el-Sheikh. So maybe in this round, can I ask you to give us a short perspective of what you think is the most important result that should be achieved in Sharm el-Sheikh at COP27? Is that a question you can answer? Can we start with you, Minister Kasaya?
Well, at COP27, we should all agree as a world or as the human race. How do we mitigate these pending catastrophes that it seems, from what I'm hearing here, there is no country that may escape The extent may vary, but we are all really in the net. Can we change our mode of operations? Can we ask a scientist to help us to discover more means of developing our countries? What can we do? Really, to me, my concern is that if things continue the way they are continuing, I'm basing on Uganda and my neighbors, humanity could be in a very serious problem. And some of us, we don't want to be part of a problem non-solved, because we value our pride, and we want, when we eventually go away from the earth, the children, the grandchildren should be able to congratulate and say, those old wise men and women were able to do this and this to make the world a better place to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you have sketched the end goal. And indeed, being able to look our children and grandchildren in the eye and say that we have done the best we could is I think, a very honorable end goal. There might have to be some milestones on the way to reach that. And some of those might be achievable in Sharm el-Sheikh. So I think I'd love to hear some perspectives from our fellow panelists. Your Excellency, so Paulette, what are you going to Sharm el-Sheikh for? What is your shopping list and what is at the top of the list?
Well, we are calling it COP27. It's representing 27 years of working. And we have been talking about policies making. We have been talking about financings, but we are ignoring the fact that there's a big problem with the scientific findings already done, but we do not employ scientific solutions. So my expectation is that I hope COP27 will take scientific findings seriously and get those scientists to work together to solve it. Thank you.
Short answer, more science-based decisions from your side. Excellent. Can we ask you what is at the top of the priority list for COP27 for Vietnam?
So Vietnam's green growth strategy has identified many goals in order to reach net zero by carbon emission by 2050. But we have identified 8 sectors to target our green growth policy: energy, transportation, industry, waste management, and air quality, construction, agriculture, and health travel. But among the 8 sectors, we think that energy is the core of the economy, and energy transition will be the core mission for Vietnam's green growth strategy. However, green energy transition is very, very costly. And of course, we need the support in terms of financial support, technical expertise, technical transfer, human resource development, and capital mobilization. Thank you.
Indeed, you refer to energy transition, and we know that at COP26, South Africa made quite a splash by coming up with this agreement to have hopefully $8 billion invested in their just energy transition. And we know that a number of countries in Asia, particularly Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, are preparing for such a package as well. Can you say anything about your, what are your hopes for a JETP package for Vietnam? Your microphone.
At the moment, we are building the master plan for the energy transition, and we think that's when the master plan has decided by the PM. I think it's very challenging for Vietnam to mobilize the private sector capital. Yes. It is very, very challenging for Vietnam because we are, as I mentioned, we are still developing country, and the transition of the energy related to the labor who have a low income. Yes, it is. So that's why I said that the energy transition is very costly in our country and in other countries.
Indeed, discussions on just transition will definitely be a key part in COP27, I think. As GGGI, we looked at the NDCs that were submitted for COP26, and we deliberately calculated the green jobs associated with those NDCs, because most NDCs, they make an estimate of the emission reductions. They don't talk about green jobs. But when we talk about just transition, green employment becomes very important. And in fact, the green jobs gained through renewable energy can be higher than the brown jobs lost in coal mining or in the fossil fuel sector. And yes, we came out with a publication last year that showed that there are millions of green jobs linked to renewable energy, and there is an even larger number of green jobs linked to forest targets in the NDCs. That is, I think, a good starting point for discussion on just transition. And in fact, I had a discussion with the Minister of Finance in Colombia, and he was saying, look, our income is coming from coal mining, it's coming from oil. You know, what will happen to our pocketbook when we stop doing that? What will happen to those coal miners in those districts? And as part of the green recovery of COVID-19, we did a small study in Colombia to show how in the 6 districts where they're mining coal, and there are 60,000 jobs linked to that, what they can do. And we did work with Colombia on a bioeconomy strategy to develop the forest economy. And we showed that in those same 6 districts, if the government over the next 10, 15 years, when the coal mines will close, will invest in the forest economy, they can generate more than 60,000 jobs in those same 6 districts. So there can be a just transition from a coal mining economy to a forest-based economy. But of course, the government would have to invest in that transition. So yes, it does require resources for a just transition, but having a good plan, bringing good plans to the table, having bankable projects in that space, I think can come with solutions that will support that transition that Vietnam is looking for as well. Thank you for raising a very important subject. Now, if we turn to Rwanda, energy transition is probably not at the top of your list. I think for most African countries, adaptation and an increased focus on adaptation and increased financing for adaptation is a general theme. But I'm not sure if that is what you are going to Sharm el-Sheikh for, or if you have a different topic. What is at the top of your list for COP27, Minister?
So, thank you, DG. Of course, as you said, Rwanda now to reach 74% for universal access in the energy. And then, of course, out of 70%, 22 or 23, of course, is solar energy, so which is showing like importance of this green energy, especially solar. But of course, when you look at it in Africa, it's almost 2 billion. So people, they are out of access to electricity. So, and then joining, of course, linking to this climate change effect we are seeing now. And then the impact of COVID, so the situation must be worse now. So the government are required to do something urgently. And then to join the effort. But of course, apart from that, so transition energy, so I know it's very, very important. But as I said, so we have to join the effort. So because when we are saying, so 2 billion of people in Africa, they don't have access to to electricity, to energy. So there are some other associated problems. So I think it's time actually to see how we should move fast and then for sustainable solution. So as you said, COP27, of course, I think it's the right time to join the effort as the word. So to support each other. So in order to mitigate the climate change, so impact. But developed industrial countries, so they're quest to raise financially green fund, so as they highly contributed to this climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for indeed focusing on not so much the transition away from coal for Africa, but the increasing energy access for the population. That is, of course, a key area for Africa, but not only. Yesterday in our discussion, we discussed also for Cambodia. Indeed, for the grid, there is long-term agreements to buy electricity from neighboring countries. That is more difficult to transition away from, but there is still a significant part of the population that doesn't have access, that are using charcoal for cooking, unsustainable biomass. So there is a real opportunity to expand off-grid, mini grids, solar batteries. I think that we should all work on together, in addition to the other priorities. And yes, it comes back to finance every time. The good news in renewable energy is that well-prepared projects, you don't need to go to the GCF for renewable energy. You can find the private sector, you know, and that I think one of the interesting projects that GGGI did in 2021, it was for Colombia, but the conditions were similar. Colombia has a very large share of the population living in the Amazon off-grid, and we convinced a very big beer company that sells Bavaria in 30,000 rural shops to put solar panels on the roofs of those shops. And yes, I like to joke that that keeps the beer cold, but it also gives access to energy in rural areas that are off-grid. And there was enough reason for that private sector company to invest directly $265 million. You know, beer is quite a profitable business, so they can afford it. So actually finding ways to draw in the private sector, particularly for renewable energy, I think is a very good opportunity. Harder for adaptation, but for renewable energy, we should do that more and more. So thank you for sharing that. Finally, we come to you, Madame, for Lao. Are you willing to answer the same question of what your priorities would be for COP27?
Thank you very much. Of course, we preparing, you know, to join, and myself also preparing to join the COP27. And before that, I would also like to share with you that in this year, we have, you know, completed or, you know, prepared the NACDP financing strategy, which, you know, consider the green budget into this, you know, to implement a green agenda. Of course, we have, you know, completed, you know, several activities in sectoral regarding transportation and also, you know, agriculture sector. So before joining the COP27, so we have, you know, discussed internally, you know, we also like to share what we have done in our country, and also we would also like prepare to learn from other countries, like today even. So our priority is not only to learn, but also, you know, to based on our, you know, NACDP financing strategy, we would also like to mobilize more support, you know, from development partners to implement, you know, a green growth agenda in our countries. And of course, you know, we would continue priority regarding, you know, greenhouse emission. Of course, you know, it's still low in our country, but in reality, we need to consider now in order to reduce in our country, and also the capacity building regarding, you know, green agenda implementation in our country is also another area that we need to consider. I do agree with you that when talking about green growth, many people think about MONRE or Ministry of Environment or Natural Resource and Environment. For my, understanding, of course, that would be, technical part of implementation, but green growth agenda is a kind of, multi-sectoral. So we do need to work together to share the knowledge gain and also, to share what we are planning to achieve. So we prepare to, to join with, our perspective and to gain from the COP27, especially to achieve our target of, net zero target. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I think we are nearing the end of this second panel, and we are getting close to the welcome reception we have before our Assembly and Council meeting. In the agenda, it said our President and Chair, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, would give closing remarks, but I think he is detained in another meeting elsewhere in the building. So allow me to make some closing remarks. And first and foremost, it is such a pleasure to see our members and see you here in Seoul and to be able to have such conversations. And I'd like to thank all of you that were on the first and the second panel to share your views and your time, to be here in person, to have a chance to exchange experiences, and of course for participating in our governance meetings tomorrow. We are a membership organization. We only exist to support our members. And it was wonderful to hear from 10 of our founding members, more recent members, and some of the countries that are close to joining, how your journey has been. And I think one of the conclusions is many of you have put in place many policies, have many plans. We clearly share some priorities for some key issues, whether it's plastic or some of the other key issues that were put on the table. But all of you talked about resources, those that you can mobilize domestically, but then you need additional resources. So GGGI's focus on mobilizing green and climate finance for its members, I think, has proven to be a very good choice from our members early on to focus on that. We're getting more and more experience. It's still a bit uneven. We have some very large results in some countries, but we see a growing pipeline, a growing expertise, and I think a growing interest in our member countries to work at all levels, from ministries of finance to ministries of environment, on these topics of how do we come up with a good pipeline of projects that are bankable? How do we come up with the right financial instruments, green bonds or otherwise? How do we use that small amount of ODA from the Green Climate Fund or from donors to the maximum extent to leverage the private sector so that we can, in a way, hopefully soon no longer talk about that $100 billion, which is, on the table, that almost obscures the real goal of not just talking about 100 billion, but talking about the trillions of dollars that are needed for the world to deal with climate change and the associated sustainable development challenges. So we are extremely pleased to have you here, and we are even more proud to accompany you in your journey to accelerate green growth in the GGI family, the expanding family, 44 members and counting, 45 with Kazakhstan, and we know there are another 20 plus countries, some of them in the room. I'm looking at the ambassador of the Dominican Republic. We've had these discussions with a number of you. So I know that we are in a growing family. There's a strong demand for the kind of work that we do together. And we look forward to continue to do it and to scale it up and to be successful together so that in the end, we can look our children and grandchildren in the eye and say that we've done the best we could. I think that was very wise words from you, sir. We'll keep those in mind. With that, may I close and hand it back to our MC.
Thank you. Thank you very much for a very insightful and informative session to our excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen who have all been in attendance and participating. We now wish to invite you to the welcome reception for the Assembly and Council that will be taking place right next door at our amphitheater. So thank you once again.